This is a standing cable tricep pushdown. A great exercise to target the long head of the triceps, and I'm going to show you a few little tricks that can optimize your growth. For that height of that bar, you can use whichever cable system you like. I like to use one where I'm able to have that bar at its resting position right about chin level. This is going to allow me to have a 30-degree angle on that cable while only being a couple feet back from that pulley system. This is going to allow me to have a good amount of resistance on that cable at the very bottom of this exercise. Versus if I was just standing straight underneath that cable system, that cable and my arm would basically be the same angle, offering very little resistance at the very bottom. When getting into position, make sure you're standing about a couple of feet back from that cable system again to make this angle. Control is super important on these, so make sure you're controlling that eccentric on that way up, actively pushing down, and making sure you're not using too much momentum on that way down. I'm also using a straight bar, or this is actually a little bit more of a kind of easy bar with the little curves, making for a more natural hand placement. However, you can use a V-bar or a cable rope attachment. Each of them have their pros and cons. However, I like this attachment the best. And if you are using attachment like I'm doing in this video, I'd recommend using one that has a smaller circumference versus one that has a fatter grip. It's a little bit harder on those wrists and a lot harder to grip. Now that you're standing a couple feet back from that pulley system, when you're bringing that bar down in position, make sure you have that butt slightly back and you're leaning slightly over with that chest. Not only is it going to offer you a little bit more stability than standing straight up, but it's also going to allow you to push those hips slightly back. That way at the very bottom, you're not tapping those thighs and limiting your range of motion. Also, to minimize use of that chest, make sure that you are kind of pushing those shoulder blades back and down. That way, you're pushing as much as you can with those tricep, squeezing those arms slightly along the sides of your body, and keeping that elbow to where it's along the seam of the shirt. For those arms, as you're pushing that shoulder blade back and down, try to find a sweet spot to where you're pushing that arm slightly into the side of the body to where the top of the arm is kind of tucked in and touching the lat. However, the elbow is not touching the side of your body and flares out just a tiny bit. As you're going both up and down, try to keep that arm in the same spot. A good indicator that you have the arm in a good spot is that elbow is going to be along the seam of the shirt, as you can see right here. As you're going down, squeeze those abs to help you keep those shoulders down and slightly back. At the very bottom, try to contract that tricep all the way, almost like you're trying to tap that bar down to the thighs. And because of the angle of the cable, we're getting a good amount of resistance at the very bottom, so make sure you're holding for at least 1 second. And then on that way up, we're taking it nice and slow, 3 to 4 seconds on that eccentric, and as you're going up, imagine like you're still pushing down towards the ground. On that way up, you can allow that elbow to come slightly up and forward to get a little bit more lengthening of that tricep. But try not to do it too excessively, or you're going to be using a lot of momentum, the lats and the chest to bring that bar back down. Also, to make sure you get good lengthening of that tricep during that eccentric, make sure that you're bringing that bar up far enough to where the angle between your bicep and your forearm is making less than a 90-degree angle. I also like to pause for a little bit at the very top to feel that lengthening and that stretch. As you get closer and closer to failure, your body's going to want to use that chest a little bit more to bring that bar down. So to help avoid this, make sure you're keeping those shoulder blades back and down, a little bit more focus and attention there, and keeping those abs super tight. Now, I do also want to talk a little bit more about the different attachments that you can use on this exercise. As I mentioned previously, my favorite is the straight bar. I feel like with an overhand grip, I can control and push past failure a little bit more than the other attachments. Now, with the overhand grip, you're going to be using a little bit more of the lateral head of that tricep because at the very bottom, when those elbows are fully locked out, that elbow is going to be pointing slightly out to the side, targeting a little bit more of that lateral head. Now, if you're using a neutral grip, kind of like if you're using a cable rope attachment with the palms facing towards the center of your body, you're going to get a little bit less of the lateral head, a little bit more of the long head. Also, if you're using a cable rope attachment, it's going to be a little bit easier on the elbow joints since it's going to allow you to bring those hands closer towards the center of your body and then pushing out to the side as you go down. However, I often find it's really hard to get close to failure on those because after a certain rep, you're going to be kind of struggling to get the full contraction. So just do the one that you like the best and you're able to get the most out of. Also, another attachment that you can use is a V-bar attachment where those handles come down at an angle. However, I tend to stay away from this one because at the very bottom, those hands are going to still be close together and I feel like I don't get as good a contraction on those. And at the very top, those hands are also going to be close together. And to push down, I feel like I use a little bit more of the chest than the other two variations. However, as I mentioned before, do the variation that you like the most to get the best contraction and are able to control the most. If you like this video, please leave a like and also subscribe if you aren't subscribed already. And also check out my channel. I have a whole bunch of other tutorial videos with little tips and tricks on how to get a little bit more out of each exercise.